Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us here today. My name is Paulina Raniecka, and I am the Communications Coordinator at the Amsterdam Sustainability Institute, and it is my pleasure to be hosting today SDG Academy. Just a quick introduction to ASI. The Amsterdam Sustainability Institute provides an inclusive umbrella for sustainability-related research at Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam. We promote dialogue and cooperation across disciplines and faculties of our university and beyond. SDG Academies by ASI offer a chance for a deep dive into the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Each session focuses on a different topic that links to the SDGs, with experts offering first-hand insights and reflecting on the roles of different stakeholders in our society. Today's session revolves around the power of collective decision-making within an academic context, using the recently held Sustainability University Assembly at VU Amsterdam as the case study. Let's have a look at the program of today. We have 5 main components. The first 4 are the flash talks, which will be offered to us by our guest speakers. The first one, on Introduction to Assemblies, will be offered by Remco van der Stoep from the independent organization G1000. This will be followed by University Governance and Assemblies, offered by Ivar Maas from the Sustainability Office VU at VU Amsterdam. The third talk will be on the Sustainability University Assembly that took place at VU, and this will be given by Manon Swart, who is a colleague from the Sustainability Office VU at VU Amsterdam as well. And the last talk will share some participant insights, and that will be offered by Magalí Pagliano Passaro, who is a recent VU graduate and researcher whose master thesis covered the proceedings of the Sustainability University Assembly. The final component, as you can see, is the Q&A with the participants. Please post your questions in the Q&A section in the comments. I will now pass it over to Remco van der Stoep, who will discuss the idea and practicalities of an assembly. Remco, over to you.
My name is Remco van der Stoep, and I am a professional in the space of deliberative democracy, and I work for an organization called G1000 in the Netherlands, an organization that specializes in helping organizing citizens' assemblies and organizational assemblies, spaces where large groups of people can come together to work on important decision-making together. So why is everybody talking about assemblies these days? Well, mostly because our democracy is no longer fit for purpose if it does not evolve. People have greater expectations of the role that they can take in decision making, not just going to a ballot box every 4 years or every 5 years and elect a politician that is then going to take all of the decisions in a way that is not always as transparent as you would hope to. People want to be involved with important decisions that affect their daily lives. And we can see that in many spaces. But in order for people to have a meaningful way of contributing to those decisions, what is needed is a space for people to have dialogue with each other, to speak to other people from their community and to work towards decisions that people can sort of all feel confident and happy with after having shared the things that they have in common, the things that they differ about, and come to collective solutions. That space is where an assembly would take place. So it's a fantastic way of connecting community members, not just with each other, but also with those who are responsible for taking decisions that will affect people in their daily lives. And it's also something that is increasingly needed now that we're seeing in the media every day so many stories about polarization, about people no longer understanding each other, people no longer able to communicate with each other. By organizing dialogue in a safe space where people can be themselves and where they don't feel that they need to represent anything else but their own views, you can see that people can get over those differences and that they can come to meaningful shared decisions. That's why assemblies are starting to become a really important part of our democracy and why we're organizing these in many places. I'm going to try to explain to you what a citizens' assembly is in just 1 minute, in case you have never come across a citizens' assembly before, which happens to be the majority of people. It's not something that is part of our sort of basic understanding of democracy just yet, but it will be in the future. A citizens' assembly or any assembly starts with a very large group of people. And usually they will be recruited through some form of random selection, which we call sortition. So it means that you use a random method to decide who is invited, so that it's fair and you get a group of people who are completely diverse and a very good representation of the community that they represent. Once you have those people together, and for instance, if you do this in a municipality of, say, 20,000 people, you might get 150 or 200 people in that room, and they together will make up the diversity of that community as a whole. And then they agree to meet each other a number of times. And in that large room where they are meeting, they will start having conversations about something that is important to their future. For instance, how does our community become sustainable? That's an open question. Very important to start this with an open question, so that people don't sit in their closed spaces of I have an answer to this question and this is the answer, and now I'm going to convince the person on the other end of the table of what I think. This is about considering together something that is complicated, an open question, and working towards solutions that everybody can agree with. So you'd have multiple meetings which have been designed in such a way that it allows people to really share what's important to them, to hear what other people are saying, and to find that common ground that you need to come to a decision. For that, we have people like moderators and facilitators who facilitate the dialogue and who make sure that all of the decision making is happening in an orderly manner, in a safe space, and everything transparent. The participants have access to information, so that when they have their conversations about the topic, they can also check and inform themselves so that their decisions are as well informed as possible. And finally, and very importantly, before any of these assemblies start, there needs to be buy-in from the official decision makers, from the politicians or the executives of the organization, just to make sure that people don't go to all of these meetings for no reason at all, and that there is some certainty that those who are in charge of the decision making are going to be taking seriously what comes out of this process. So that's very, very shortly, in a nutshell, what a citizens' assembly looks like. And then we can go to my final slide. So assemblies are happening everywhere. They can happen on the very local level. They can happen on the global level. You'd call it a citizens' assembly if it's something organized by a public authority, a municipality, a province, a nation state, whatever, where citizens are selected at random to do something that normally their elected representatives would be doing, which is to come up with proposals for solving a complicated societal problem. Examples of topics that have been featured in citizen assemblies are, of course, climate. There have been climate assemblies in many countries, including France, Scotland, and very recently the Netherlands. It can be about governance items such as a voting system. The first ever citizens assembly in modern times was organized in British Columbia, Canada, about their electoral system. It can be about ethical issues. I refer to Ireland, where a decision was reached about allowing for abortion after a citizens' assembly and a referendum. Then what we're seeing increasingly, especially in the last couple of years, is that the method of an assembly also works very well in other spaces. So not just in the public space, but also within organizations who are also keen to have some sort of collective decision making to reinforce their internal community building and democracy. So we see it in member organizations. Just 1 year ago, I was involved with an assembly within a pension fund, which has like 1 million paying members, from which a random selection was drawn, and they helped the pension fund to decide about how they wanted to invest the very large amounts of money into sustainable ways. Staff assemblies within organizations. We did one with a fire department last year, which included professional staff and volunteering staff. Very, very interesting also, just to bring that decision making to everyone in the organization. And you will hear much more about a university assembly from my colleagues left and right of me. But please be aware that it's not just in universities, but also in schools at all sorts of levels that these assemblies are now starting to take place with very interesting and good results. So that's in a very, very short space of time what I can tell you about citizens' assemblies, and I look forward to your questions later. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Remco. What an impossible task to really manage to synthesize all this information, but you've done an amazing job. So thank you so much. I'm sure our participants are also as we are right now. We will move on now to the next flash talk, and this will be offered by Ivar Maas, who will discuss the theoretical background of assemblies. Ivar, without further ado, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you very much, and maybe also brief, let's say, scoping on this. So now that we first heard from Remco what it means a assembly overall, I want to touch upon briefly what it means actually within VU and what the lead-ups actually were and how we positioned it governance-wise actually within the university. So because starting a process like this, starting an assembly is quite an undertaking, and we needed a good reason, let's say, also to convince our board to set up a process like this. And we had some few very concrete lead-ups for that. And the first one that, well, there was the development of a new institutional plan. So the whole university wanted to look at, okay, what do we do now with the university, with the institute that we have? And related to that is also then, okay, if we have this new strategy, then what does that mean for our sustainability the coming times? So if you can click one time. So that led to also a bit of the goals that we then had behind it, which was that, well, with this assembly, beyond only getting input for these new strategic goals, we also wanted to start and build a community around it and increase the support of the strategic plans that the university is making. And in doing so, we wanted to facilitate this organizational learning, all these people coming together and deliberate and talk about the topic, is in a way learning from each other and teaching each other's different perspectives. Besides that, and that's then maybe the more on the concrete side, it's having these kind of concrete advices and recommendations on how to move forward. And besides that, we were also studying this, how Magalí will also talk about more, but we were also studying this in a way of, what are the implications actually of these deliberative processes? So this was a bit of the lead up. And that was then, how are we then preparing for that? What was our approach here is, as Remco also mentioned, this buy-in of the administration is very, very important. That's why our first step there, or an important step there, was to get approval of the board of VU to take the outcome serious. And that means as much as that they will look at all the examples or look at all the outcomes and they will adopt them or explain why they cannot do it at that time. It's another thing is that, you want to ensure autonomy. Otherwise, it would be, let's say, the sustainability office where I work, asking people, what do you think of sustainability? Which is very much already steering people towards maybe particular kind of thought. So we want to keep that kind of autonomy of people participating, and in doing so also ensuring that it is an entity, let's say, on its own, that is advising the board on what the community, what the people think of how to become a sustainable university. Besides that, I think maybe on some practical remarks, is that it takes a lot of communication to get this going, to get people involved and informed. As you just heard from Remco, in 1 minute, a crash course of what it is already quite a challenge. Now imagine trying to do that in one email or just one poster. So there, I think it's a big challenge. And then of course also the design process, where G1000 in our case took the lead in shaping that up. So this is then in preparing, and now the final slide is then, so the let's say the governance side of it. So where did we position the assembly? And of course, here you see the organogram, or let's say the structure of how the university works. This is a very simplified version, and already there are a lot of arrows, as you can see in this picture. And the central idea here is that we set something up that is, let's say, additional to the existing structures. So, and in the ideal sense, you also have a representation or people coming from all these different parts of the university, which makes it, in a way, let's say, representative of that university or of the community that you're trying to, that you're looking at. And in this case as well, by making sure everyone could participate in it, we try to get the system in the room. And we also put it in such a way that the outcomes of the assembly will follow then, let's say, the regular decision-making process of the university. And in doing so, we were not bypassing, let's say, any systems around that, but we very much, let's say, made it as an additional element that could be added in, or additional element to how the policies are being developed within the university. So that's it from my side. Also, very briefly, in the preparation and a bit of governance of where we positioned it within the university.
Thank you so much, Ivar. Another very flash talk, kind of flash talk. Thank you so much. And we will now move on to the more practical take. And our colleague Manon Swart will share our experience at VU Amsterdam. How did it go for our university? So let's dive into that. Manon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Paulina. Yes, I will talk to you a bit about indeed the practicalities of organizing such an assembly. I want to. It was on one of Ivar's slides, but indeed the central question of the assembly was indeed how do we become a sustainable university. So that is where that was the focus for this whole assembly. And the assembly took place in a process of 5 sessions, and I will talk you a bit through what happened during these sessions. So the first session was all about agenda setting, and it was called the Sustainability Summit. This was to let the participants get to know each other, but also get to know the concept of dialogue, and get familiar with the dialogue rules actually that G1000 uses. In multiple rounds of dialogue, the participants also came to a set of topics, and that's on my next slide. That was done indeed in multiple rounds then of dialogue, but also answering questions, and with the help of this word cloud, they came to indeed this list of topics that formed the basis of the working groups that were formed afterwards. And in the second part of the summit, the participants also got together to see what experts that were not in the room at that specific moment they could invite for the second session. So the second session is on the next slide, was called the Inspiration Carousel, where indeed these requested experts, so to say, were invited. So they were in the room, and the participants could then decide which 3 topics they wanted to gain more knowledge about. So they indeed did this carousel, exchanged, but mostly gathered knowledge on the specific topics that they wanted. And then in the second half, the participants incorporated their newly gained findings into their proposals. So they started in the first session already. They started working on the beginning of their on their proposals, and then in the second session they incorporated their newly gained findings. The third and the fourth session, which are on the next slide, had more the focus on refining the proposals, but also in the third session and exchanging the content of their proposals with the other groups. So the working groups then told each other, okay, this is what we are now thinking of, and then exchanged information with each other. The fourth session was also about this, and then in the second half there was also they tested a bit of the voting format that was used in the fifths and the last session of this. So that big happening was the university convention. This session took actually a whole working day. And here the participants not only presented their proposals to each other, but also to an expert panel, the wider VUE community. So we indeed invited a wider audience to participate or to visit the university convention. And then later on, there was the actual voting session where participants could see if there was a majority to get the proposals into the agreement. So the proposals that they presented indeed formed then the SUA agreement, the so-called SUA agreement. And I think 53 of the proposals actually made it into the agreement. Also, the SUA agreement was at the end of the session handed over to the executive board. So they were present during that day. And at the end of the session, monitoring and sounding board group was formed to ensure that the agreement will actually be followed up upon. You see a nice picture of this happening in the next slide. Yes. And then lastly, I want to talk a little bit about the considerations for the organization of such an event, because indeed it's quite something to do this. There's a lot of things attached to it, of course. One of the things that we thought about was indeed the language, like what language are we using? So we started out doing both Dutch and English, but I think quite quickly we went through doing it all English, but with the, of course, with the toestemming, permission of the group. So it's all been going in dialogue, of course. And then about the space, yeah, so the first two sessions were in an open and visible space. We preferred having all the sessions in an open space. Practically, it wasn't possible to arrange that, but I think it's we wanted this to be open to the VUE community, also to see the process happening. And I think that was a nice way of showing it also. Then the ratio of students and staff, we went with a 50-50 percentage, but that's that's a consideration on how to do that. And then lastly, the time span. So that's not only, I think, the planning of the session. So I think you don't want it to be too far or to distant from each other, so that you keep the engagement or the involvement from the participants. But it's also about when do you plan it during the day. As within a university, there are students and staff having lectures or work. So you have to see what time fits well for your audience. And in this case, it's students and staff. That was it from my side.
Thank you so much. And I see that all the pictures were taken during our university assembly, correct? These are all from...
Yes.
Okay, that's really, really exciting to see. And I do spot some of you in the last picture. So a little Easter egg for our participants as well. Thank you so much, Manon. I will move on now to, last but not least, Magalí Pagliano Passaro, who will share her personal experience of the process and insights from interviews she held with other SUA participants. Magalí, over to you.
Well, thank you, and hi, everyone. Well, as Paulina just said, my name is Magalí, and I was a participant of the SUA, and I also conducted my research for my master thesis on it, which involved talking to a lot of participants as well. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about the general participant experience, which of course involves my experience. So to begin with, I'd like to say, I think the SUA was a very unique experience for everyone that took a part of it, because it's not very often that as a student, and I feel like I can also talk for some of the staff, get together to discuss and deliberate and get to proposals that will so directly potentially impact a university strategy in such an important topic like sustainability is. So in this sense, I thought it was a very different opportunity. And at the same time, I feel like a lot of us, and as Remco was talking about earlier, would like to be represented and included. And actually, when I was conducting my interviews for my research, I was asking people what motivated them to be a part of the SUA, and a lot of them were saying that they would like to be heard a bit more. So in this sense, I feel like it was a very new and refreshing idea that it helped us be more included and be able to contribute to an important topic in the university. And this contribution did not just happen in an isolated way, but the idea of the assemblies being surrounded in an environment full of people who are different from us, but who belong in the same community, which was, of course, really nice. And I feel like it really did deepen that feeling of community between us. And well, from my personal experience, sharing these evenings with people and talking about our projects, our ideas on sustainability, and working on the proposals, organizing ourselves to see, well, who did what and how we can get to the best proposal possible, really did spark the feeling of collectiveness and even friendship for some of us. So in the one side, I wanted to talk about the inclusion and the community building. And then on my other slide, I also wanted to talk about the learning side, because there was a lot of things that we learned. I don't think everyone, for example, knows what an assembly is, what deliberation is, or how to do it, or about the university specifically, what the priorities are, what the university's plans are, or even about sustainability. We all come from different backgrounds, so everyone stands in a different point of view. But I think being with each other in the assembly helped us learn from each other, as Ivar was also saying in the beginning, was one of the goals, and I think it definitely happened. For example, for me, I was only a student at the VRU for 1 year, so there was a lot about the university that I didn't know, and how the university does certain stuff or what the priorities were in certain points. But being in a table full of staff that had more experience and more years here at the university, and them explaining some of the things to me was very interesting to me as a student and as someone who wants to contribute to the proposals. And also because I was studying sustainability for the last year, there was some of it that I could also bring into the table as well in that aspect. So we were both like complement each other. And I just think it was a very like interesting and like really nice moment of mutual learning that was, of course, supported by experts and decision makers and inspirators and moderators and everyone that was part of the process. So I think that was like really valuable for me to know as like a person, as a student, and I think also was very valuable for the community at the VRU and for the university. And now that we have been through this part of the process and we have made the proposals and we have voted on them and we have our final agreements, I think we're all very excited to see where it goes. And for that, well, we have our monitoring and sounding board group, which I'm a part of. This picture of us. And yeah, we just had our second meeting today, so we are kind of seeing where it goes, and I think we're all very excited for it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Magalí. Just one follow-up question to you. I'm curious, how was it for you to balance those two roles? So on the one hand, you were a participant, on the other hand, you also. How did you find that experience?
It was really interesting. I mean, it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be, because in the beginning I thought I would have to make some space so I could keep my research like as non-biased as possible. But then it was actually so interesting to have this insight from the participants, and there was a lot of things that I learned that were very valuable from my research that I wouldn't have known if I wasn't there, and I just heard it from the interviews. So I think it was like a really like amazing experience, and I had to keep the balance, but it was nice. Like it wasn't hard at all.
Perfect. That's really interesting to hear. Thank you. Okay, so thank you so much for the final flash talk. We will be moving on to the final section of our session today, which is the Q&A with the participants. And let us know if you have any questions to our participants, and I can share them with them and answers. But in the meantime, I was wondering, so we learned a lot about the idea behind an assembly, but also the proceedings, and it actually happened, right? So this has taken the last couple of months, and it actually took place at VU. I was wondering, what are some of the results that you could share? So what came out of it? Could one of you, or maybe a few of you, share a few of the main takeaways with us, please?
Shall I start? the most tangible result of this process is the agreement. So at the final meeting that Manon has been speaking about, and where you've seen that beautiful picture of all these people lined up on the staircase, they were all in that room, and each group had presented their ideas for a sustainable Vrije Amsterdam. Then those ideas were scrutinized, and there was a vote, and some of the ideas were not given enough votes for them to be in the agreement. Most of them were. So we have ended up with a very strong sustainability agreement that's really owned by the people who participated, which was a group, as Manon explained, consisting of 50% staff members and 50% students. And those are proposals for Vrije Amsterdam to become a sustainable university, and they range from very easy to implement, very practical things that you can start doing today, to slightly more ambitious long-term things about bringing down the total emissions of the university, or monitoring everything that happens in every segment of your operations. But all in all, there is a clear sort of set of ideas that the university can work with the confidence that a group of people who are reflective of the community as a whole have agreed that these are things that they think are important for university to sort of start engaging with, to start implementing. So that is a very tangible outcome, and I will leave it to the others to speak about some of the other results.
Yeah, Joel, yeah, but indeed we can all just pick maybe something. Maybe one that I think is quite nice, just to pick one, is that actually when the board member received the SUA agreement, he indicated also himself that before we started with this whole process, he was quite a bit skeptical of how well it would work. But he indicated also in that same sort of acceptance speech that he really turned around on that, and that he did now more and more see indeed the value of these kind of processes. And I think that might allude to a certain kind of culture shift, or at least a little hint in towards a different kind of direction where, well, as the title of this SDG Academy says, maybe there is indeed at least a bit more push towards more collective decision making in academia. So I think, yeah, it's less tangible, but I do think you see it in some of these small hints where we might have nudged it a bit into towards the direction of more collective decision making.
Thank you
I
very
think,
much. Yeah, Manon. Yeah.
Yeah, no, one thing that's also less tangible, but I think it creates really a buzz through your organization, right? So this is happening. There's a lot of departments also involved with the setup, even. So they know about it. People know that this is a process happening. So I think the buzz creates already something. And the other thing, but it was more adding to what you were saying, and that was indeed, I think there's just a lot of knowledge gained, right? But not only on the participant side, also indeed on our side, like there's also some things during the process that we thought, okay, the people want this, but we're also already doing it. So it also says whether you're working into the right direction, yes or no. Yeah, so I think overall a lot of knowledge as well, but in different ways.
And showing if the communication on those things that we're doing is enough.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's perfect. I think that paints quite a full picture of what came out of it. And I'm really curious to dig in a little bit more into that. We got one question specifically about the recommendations and the intentions that were included in the sustainability agreement. How did you make it manageable? Was there some clustering involved, perhaps narrowing down of the focus, working groups that focus on specific areas?
Who's answering this?
Yeah, this is a question for maybe the monitoring and sounding more group, maybe.
sorry, so the question is about the final points and like how we got to them?
Or like,
I don't know if I understood right.
Yes, so essentially, how did you prioritize? So you got a lot of different results and areas to focus on, or to make it into an actual agreement that is, let's say, digestible and understandable also for those that didn't participate.
Yes, so when we were participating in the assembly, we were divided into working groups that had all of the different themes that Manon told you about. So then we would pick some decision points of things that we felt that they were more important, and we would all write them like very clearly, so everyone in the assembly and in general could understand them. And then at the end we voted on them, and then the agreement was just like the compilation of all of them. But now that we already had the agreement after the voting, well, it's not completely done yet because we are only in our second meeting, but we are talking about how we are going to address these points and if we are going to prioritize them and how we are going to arrange them, because it's definitely a lot of information and a lot of similar topics. It's not completely sorted out yet, but it's what we're starting to work on now. So yeah, it's starting.
Yeah. If I can add to that, the process as a whole is a bit of a filter, if you like. So you start very broadly with everyone's individual priorities and ideas, and they're all being put to the table, and they're all being spoken about by people from different backgrounds. And then you discover in that first meeting where there is common ground, where there are things that not just you, but somebody else also thinks is important. And then the participants just form those working groups around a number of themes, and those themes are already a way of organizing all of the information and the priorities into something that is manageable. And when I say manageable, we're talking about, we started with 15 working groups and we ended with, I think, 12. So it's 12 sets of decision points have been put to the participants at the last meeting. Groups were limited to maximum 5 decision points to bring to a vote. So that means that there were no more than 60 decision points that were voted upon at the last meeting. And as Magalí has rightly pointed out, that is not the end of the process, because there is a group of participants who come from this larger group of participants who volunteer to then help prepare the organization for implementing them by making sure that everybody understands the spirit behind what's in those decision points so that they can be well understood and then implemented in the right way. So it's a long process, but I mean, it is something that deserves that sort of time and consideration, because the impact in the end is something that is going to have many, many years of real meaning.
Can I add something to that?
Of course, please.
So I think now that you're talking, I'm thinking like we shouldn't, I think, underestimate the expertise that G1000 brought in by moderating the event, because it takes really a lot of, I think, indeed expertise to see during such an event, like, okay, this and that topic can be combined, and it now maybe seems as if it was just done, but it's of course during a session like that, it's an hour of really converging indeed into these specific groups. So I think the moderation is just a very important aspect of this that shouldn't be underestimated. And that was just very nice work from G1000 side.
Thank you so much. We will stay in a similar focus right now. There's a few questions about the practicalities of the SUA, and the first one revolves around the organization itself. So I was wondering if you could dive in a little time commitment for the preparation. When did you start? What were the steps there? And perhaps you could give us a very rough overview of the budget and where that money came from. Was it an internal project? Did you have external funding? Could you tell us a little bit of these very, very practical steps, please?
Yeah. I can start and then leave it in along the way. But yeah, no, we started I think, almost a year before actually the assembly was there. And we started then quite light with almost, let's say, preparing the organization for this. So we had the first meeting on the Sustainability Day, which is an open day at VU, well, revolving around sustainability. And there we had climate assemblies and how they are introduced now into local and national and global politics. And there also, it was already that some participants were there saying, wow, okay, we should maybe do something like this in the university. And then we thought, yeah, good, okay, we have sparked this kind of enthusiasm around it. But then comes also the question, okay, can we do this ourselves? Do we need help with that? And yeah, what is actually the scope and what will be the question? And well, where's the expertise? Well, just a lot of questions. And also, what does that then require from the board to commit to something like this? So that whole process actually of then having this first idea and then working on a proposal that the board could also approve, that took the rest of the year, so to say. And there, I think it was quite challenging also for us, where we were balancing on the one hand, let's say, well, not having the expertise, but needing to deliver quite a precise plan to the board to give them a feel for what it actually meant. And so that whole process also was a bit, let's say, was quite difficult. And the first time actually we went to the board, it was shut down. We weren't allowed to continue at that stage, and we had to search within the organization if we could link it to more other kind of programs. And luckily we found. So the university has a big dialogue, like science in dialogue program, and with that sort of in the back of our minds, we could use that as also the general umbrella. That we can then could then push it further. So I would say then as a recommendation, find your allies within the university. Try to, it's not only something for sustainability. Well, depending, of course, our lead up to that was quite specific, but try to find your allies within the university to get that going. And then it eventually was. Additionally, we could say that this is part of the sustainability strategy. This was an important way of which we could further galvanize the community for sustainability. And we were lucky enough that we could afford it in that sense from our own budget that we got. I would say the cost for this will differ wildly. So we have VU has an internal cost mechanism system, which is like a tiny economy within the university, and that in itself was in that sense quite expensive, but it's also artificial in a way because it's just funding internally that's being shifted around. I think also in sort of prior estimations we talked about it was, let's say, around 100,000. That was around the estimation. So maybe also, I don't think I can give the precise amount, but that's a bit of the, let's say, the ballpark that you can think about in organizing something like this, with all the extra, let's say, asterisks related to that. This was...
Yeah, maybe to add from, like, I was doing event management for the assembly, and I think but this is of course very dependent on your own organization and how it works, but I think I spent in the end 2 to 3 working days a week arranging all the practicalities, and then I had a counterpart within G1000 helping me as well. But yeah, it's a substantial part, I would say, of your working week. Yes.
Yeah, so maybe to add to that, so we had a VU project team, which was at least 4 people. So someone from communication, someone for the event planning, someone a bit more overall, and I think somewhere else, well, around 3 to 4 people. Then indeed, I think that was around maybe 2 to 3 working days, and that I think for 3 months. maybe more.
Yeah.
And then we had also G1000. So again, yeah, if you would want to do this all by yourself, that would mean quite a substantial team at that. So G1000, yeah, almost that sort of similar kind of work or amount of people there.
If I may interrupt, because we also have a question about the bias and keeping the independence. And I think that's a beautiful segue to ask Remco about the exact involvement of G1000 and essentially also the general question of how to keep this process transparent, but also unbiased, and making sure that perhaps certain interests power other interests. So ensuring that there's no hierarchy also in the participants. So let's break it down, and perhaps Remco, you could give us a little bit of an overview on the role of G1000, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question, because it's so central to how we work and to what we do in these assemblies, because they're frankly not worthwhile if you cannot do them in an unbiased and independent manner. As an organization, G1000 is adamant that we can only do our work if the organization that we work with accepts that we are an independent party in that process. We sign an agreement at the start that doesn't only say something about what we require the board to do in terms of dealing with the outcomes of it and taking those seriously, but also about respecting the independence of us as the organization responsible for the process, and about not interfering with either the process or the content whilst the assembly is ongoing. So that means that as soon as we have recruited the participants who are going to make up the assembly, the organization no longer has any influence as to what's being said in that room between those participants. And nor do we, because we don't take an interest in the content, in the topic that is being discussed. The only interest that we have is to make sure that we have a very fair and transparent process where all of the participants feel heard and understood and have been able to express themselves properly. So those are the core values. We have a set of 7 core values that we are always communicating to sort of explain to everyone involved. This is why we do what we do, and this is why we do it in the way that we do it. And all of that comes down to us being there exclusively for the process, and always making sure that the participants are in the driving seat, that they are the ones who decide what happens, not only when it comes to sort of the content of the proposals that they end up voting about, but also about how they themselves go through the process. The process is set up in such a way that it is flexible and that it can respond to what the participants want, and that it creates a lot of sort of moments where participants themselves decide who do they want to hear from in terms of the experts, what topic do they want to talk about, what sorts of proposals do they want to put to the other participants. We try to be as sort of as invisible as possible, only creating the space and the structure that they need, and then create as much of autonomy as possible for those participants so that they can develop all of the ownership that they need to take it all the way through.
And
thank you so much.
Yeah, maybe because, but now I'm also just interested. Magalí, how did you experience this? And to what again? Yeah, what is the experience as a participant?
As a participant, I think we could all see how G1000 worked, and it felt really independent, and like we could choose the topics and the experts. It really felt that way. I think to one degree, some the participants can be a little frustrated, like, tell me what to do, or like which topic, because of course, like I said, we are coming from different backgrounds, so sometimes getting to an agreement is hard, and we'd have no one to tell us precisely what to do, like which topics to cover, like exactly which expert to speak to. So that can, of course, in the beginning become a little bit like frustrating for some people, but then at the end, once you get used to it and you understand why and everything, I think people really value that you could actually choose basically everything, and at the end, yeah, the sustainability assembly and the agreement came based on what we wanted, because G1000 worked the way that it did. So I think at the end it was nice, even though initial frustration.
Thank you so much for that. And I also had a follow-up question once again to you, Magalí. Also as a participant and relating to the original question regarding the bias, how did it work when it comes to the discussion and essentially making groups? Did you see that there was certain groups that decided to stick together, people that come from the same background or have the same role, or was it truly mixed? How did that work practically?
I felt like it was mixed. I think, well, in the beginning, we had all of these topics and priorities, like kind of topics that we wanted to cover, and then we could choose where to go. But I didn't see people just coming to each other because they're doing the same thing, or they were similar. I think everyone just generally chose what they wanted to, the topic that they wanted to work on, and the working group that they wanted to be in. And a lot of people actually rotated because they were interested in many things. So in this way, I think it was quite, I think people that participated in the assembly, participants were really like there because they wanted to be there and because they wanted to do the proposals. And it wasn't like the community feeling just blinded the purpose of the assembly, but it was like, we are all a community that wants this to happen. So I think it went really well.
Thank you so much. From my understanding also, the number of participants wasn't, well, actually, what was the exact number of participants? Let me pose the question to you as the first-hand experts. How many participants did we have in the end for the assembly at VU?
Well, yeah, well, maybe after, but we started with 138, I think, was the first session. And then we saw a gradual decline. So I think the second session was 100, then it was 90, then it was, I think, 80 or something, and the final one was around 70-ish in total for the whole day. Maybe it's a bit like, maybe I'm too optimistic. But I think it was around this. So I think, let's say, half dropped out, if you look at around that, the final session.
Yeah, maybe good to mention the sessions were lasting 4 hours.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the evening. So we knew upfront that it was going to be a big time investment, and yeah, we were also curious what percentage would be coming back, right? But yeah, indeed, yeah.
That makes sense.
It is to be expected, or at least what we heard, at least to an extent. And maybe as a recommendation, if you do it, really think about what kind of incentives you build in for people, and indeed how you cater around, let's say, hours for people. So yeah, the only thing we couldn't offer more than a certificate of participation with G1000 and food and coffee and stuff like that. But at least that is something that you then can offer people. You need to have dinner anyway, so why not do it here and have a good conversation with
Thank you so much. I think that's a very fair take on the takes to join those sessions. Like you said, those were long sessions, so of course it makes sense that not everyone could commit to it continuously over the few months that it lasted. But also one of the main reasons why I wanted to pose this question is to show that at the university that has thousands, 30,000 employees and students, having such a number, there's a small chance that there can be a group of people that can have a vested interest together. So coming back to what Remco was mentioning about being randomly selected from a very large pool of people can also help with making sure that you really discuss and work on the topics that you find interesting and important, rather than working towards one specific goal in mind. Looking at the clock, we are arriving at the very end of our session. I want to once again thank our participants. It has been amazing to learn from you, and still a lot of questions in the chat left unanswered. We will be following up with our participants via email. We will share the recording of the session, and we will also share the contact details for our speakers so you can reach out to them directly. We can also answer some of the questions in writing and attach that in the email, some of the most, let's say, pressing, burning questions. Once again, thank you so much. I want to thank all the participants as well. It's been my pleasure to host the session, and I wish you a very good day. And until the next time, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.